Welcome to my World History Notes, where I read from the book that I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history. We're discussing. You can find this book on Lulu.com, Amazon.com, or at the Bible Baptist Bookstore. Just subscribe to my channel here. I'm just hoping that you'll dig into world history yourself, even though you might disagree with me, might even be offended by what I say. But as long as you have an opinion, that means you're studying it, and so I'm happy about that. Let's begin. We're talking about science and art in the 1700s, and there's some important advancements. So, scientific advancements in this period, including learning from the Native Americans who would isolate wounded warriors, unlike the Europeans who kept their wounded in infirmaries, where they often died from secondary infections. Native American women used quinine, sassafras, ipecac, and witch hazel to treat minor illnesses and injuries. The straitjacket was invented during the 1700s also. Note that the AV or King James Bible uses the word straight as a reference to something confining, easily defined in Matthew 7:14 and Job 36:16. English farmer Jethro Tull, not the 1970s rock and roll band, invented a multi row machine drill that planted several rows of seeds simultaneously. The selective breeding of animals was improved by Robert Blakewell. Added to other events, this produced an agricultural revolution in England and its colonies. The Andean potato was first introduced to the American colonies in 1718. The idea of cross fertilizing corn is established in 1724. The agricultural revolution led to another revolution. In 1709, English ironworks master Abraham Darby makes an important improvement in iron production. In 1712, the English blacksmith Thomas Newcomen invents a steam engine that bears his name, which drives a piston to generate power. Both of these innovations led England into what is called the Industrial Revolution. Most of humanity, through most of history, had been almost completely dependent upon either human, animal, wind, or water power for energy to perform work, but that was changing. In 1733, English weaver John Kay invents the flying shuttle, a great improvement on the hand loom, excuse me, which simplifies the industrialization of textile production. In 1740, super strong cast steel, Sheffield steel, is introduced into England by Benjamin Huntsman. These revolutions in agriculture, textile, and iron and steel production made England a powerhouse and drove it far ahead of any other country for nearly 200 years. The Industrial Revolution changed the entire fabric of English society. Unemployed and disenfranchised people from the countryside not only had the new world to emigrate to in order to make a life for themselves, but they also moved to the cities where industry was being created. Not only were the new opportunities and perhaps a quote better life awaiting them, but also slums, alcoholism, and a shorter life in unsafe factory conditions and substandard housing. Many fortunes were made, and England became, excuse me, the world's great superpower. But many lives were destroyed and rural ways of life that had gone unchanged for centuries were overthrown. Cities had never been particularly sanitary or safe places to live, with open sewers and filth and squalor everywhere. But now huge clouds of smoke belched out of many smokestacks in English cities, the price of progress. Revolutionary new ideas or old ideas rewrapped in modern packaging would emerge from the disaffected in the slums of England as the voices of poverty and exploitation became the voices of revolution. Children as young as 7 and even younger in some cases were worked 12 to 18 hours a day in the service of the new capitalism in unsafe and inhumane conditions, just as their parents would, often just making enough to survive another day. The great textile mills would even advertise for and house children in barracks. As the world becomes more and more one global community today, a similar situation exists in countries like China and developing countries that sell to other countries, wealthier countries. The price of progress for most of humanity is lost childhoods and short, miserable lives existing in squalor and hopeless conditions as children in poor countries repeat the trials and tribulations of English children of the 1700s. Some of the important scientists of the 1700s would be Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit of Germany, who invented the mercury thermometer in 1714. And I bet you can't guess what scale of heat measurement. Edmund Halley predicted the return of the comet that bears his name in 1705. Cotton Mather, the Boston preacher, reported that smallpox vaccinations were performed by his black slaves by applying serum from an infected pustule of an infected person into an incision made on a healthy person, thereby producing immunity. Other primitive cultures were discovered to do the same thing. Isaac Newton does a great deal of his work in the early 1700s, becoming president of the Royal Society in 1703, being knighted by Queen Anne in 1705, and continuing his work until his death in 1727, when he becomes the first scientist buried in Westminster Abbey, the burial home of many kings. The steam engine is refined but not invented by Scottish engineer James Watt in 1765. Joseph Priestley publishes a work on electricity in 1767. The Frenchman Antoine Lavoisier discovered the effects of oxygen, and Austrian Franz Mesmer makes his claims about animal magnetism and hypnotism in the 1770s. Um, and I'm going to stop there. We're going to do start with some explorers, and next, and we'll just end it today with this, and we'll continue in science and art next time. I hope that you'll read American history. I mean, excuse me, world history, and study it, and come to your own conclusions. Thank you.